talk about it.
So I'd like to follow on a bit. I don't know if you all heard at my earlier presentations about this idea, but I spelled my own name wrong here. See, all right, okay. So when we had, I presented this, and then we had another discussion with Albert Stebbins, who emphasized the problem of entropy and how, you know, if you have the idea of the topology of this is you have toroidal picture of our universe with time going around this loop. One space dimension is around that way, and the other two space dimensions are also there. So you have a three space and one time being sort of orthogonal to space dimensions. Now, if you have such a universe like this, with a lot of particles in it, the second law of thermodynamics says that the entropy must always increase, so how can time possibly be closed? And as Albert emphasized, at no time in this loop can the state of the particles in the universe, 10 to the 80 or more, be identical after 10 to the n years, where n is more than 100 billions or something, could be huge. And how can the entropy be the same? That was, I call, Albert Stebbins' problem. Well, I derived this idea of topology from two hypotheses, assuming them to be true. No boundaries to space-time. Einstein had proposed no boundaries to space, but I added space-time, and no infinities in physics. And then I get some sort of topology like this. But this idea can only be saved if the entropy, S, of the universe collapses at some time, which is a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. I say, okay, let's violate it, okay, because we don't really know. It can be violated if there is a time when entropy collapses. And this sort of seems to predict that there must be a particular special time, could be more than one around the loop here, when the entropy collapses down to zero or very small, as it was at the beginning of the Big Bang.
Not necessarily collapses, maybe gradually goes to zero, also possible, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, it can, yeah, gradually go, it goes to zero.
Good.
Okay,
Goes to zero.
But it goes to zero, but it has to go to the same entropy that our past had when it was in the Big Bang stage, or very close to the Big Bang, right? So, in a sense, this idea seems to predict there was a special time. Otherwise, the hypotheses could not be true. I want to keep them as true. So, in this scenario, our universe, at some distant future time, must collapse. I said that before, but to a volume as small as it was at the Big Bang, and not a singularity, because my hypothesis forbids infinities, and that means infinitesimals as well. But how small could the universe be here? Well, if you have, let's say, 10 to the 90 particles in the universe, say Fermi, we only can see like a rough 10 to the 80 or something like that, but some big number like that, the Planck volume is very small. And 10 to the 90, you could fit 10 to the 90 fermions into a Planck volume in about a micron. No, that's not a micron cubed. It's 100 cubic microns, if you like, very small. That's just coming from that. So then, I talk about microscopic entropy, which is not as usually defined entropy as heat over temperature, which is not sensible, I claim, at this big crunch Big Bang, to talk about temperature. But rather, the entropy is the Boltzmann constant times the logarithm of the number of possible states, microscopic states of the system, which could be one per Planck volume, for example. But, well, actually, when you have... No, I didn't mean that. I shouldn't say that, because when you have all the particles, if there's one per Planck volume, that's the only possible system you can have. There's not... the entropy should be a minimum. So, an example I gave before was the entropy of a neutron is zero, because it's a single state, and log of 1 is zero. While when it decays to a proton, electron, and neutrino, there's a very large number of possible phase elements, consistent with energy, momentum conservation, angular momentum conservation, and so on, but a big number, and the entropy has really jumped, and I argued in another meeting that this was the same as wave function collapse, and I still want to work on that more. But the very last stages of collapse, when the universe is coming down to this sort of size, then it's inevitable, I think, that these reverse reactions have to take place, like a photon plus electron becoming an electron, proton, electron, neutrino coming together and forming neutrons, and the neutrons will crunch down to a quark on plasma, whatever. But I say that we must have these collapses no longer do you get neutrons decaying, but the inverse happens. And of course, that doesn't happen now in a big expanding universe. So as the spatial volume of the universe collapses, this recombination must occur. The number of possible states collapses, and so does the entropy in this case. Can this be true? But if it can be true, and I don't yet know why it's not possible, even though I violate the second law of thermodynamics, but if I take my hypothesis to be true, it requires this. So let's do it. Okay, do you know this expression, in for a penny, in for a pound? I mean, it's doing something, you might as well do it on a big style, right? So here we are zooming in on the big, that should be BC, BB, Big Crunch, Big Bang, right? So, okay, so we're zooming in on here. This is a very short time here, and here is all of space in our universe, and our time is going up, and entropy is increasing, and entropy will continue to increase, continuing, even when the universe becomes as big as it can be and starts collapsing again, entropy will still increase down here, but at this, and all of space is here, and time is going this way by any definition, but in this sometime here, entropy comes down, and it may be just in a very small time, not when you've got lots of baryons and electrons and particles, but when they get crunched together. So there's big crunch, big bang. And here's the minimum entropy. Now don't think of this as a spatial separation. It's not. This is all of space here and here. No distance between them, or it could be a little distance in another dimension, but let's not bother about that. And then I keep CPT theorem, meaning that laws of physics are invariant under charge conjugation, parity, and time reversal. And here I'm saying there's another way of looking at this, which is that we have universe anti-universe pair creation. I mean, Feynman talked about particles going backwards in time, being antiparticles and so on. So you look at just this, forget about all this stuff here, and it's like pair creation of universe anti-universe. And the Fermion world lines are going against the direction of time here, like Feynman suggested. But it's only in this extreme time that you have this symmetry. And I'd like to see, this is a symmetry, this is a sort of boundary principle that Albert was talking about, but applied here to say that it's got to be symmetric at this point. So it allows fermion number conservation, continuous world lines, as long as all the fermions that we have in our universe can get through this neck here. It's not an infinitely small neck, but we don't know the physics around here really. We have inflation idea and so on. I'm not sure if this is inconsistent with inflation or not, but it may be consistent with it. But if you say, well, why don't we just cut it here and disconnect those two? But then you'd have a beginning of time and an end of time. And so that's not consistent with my hypotheses. So then I said CPT here gives you boundary conditions in which the universe here and the end here have to be, at least at very small times, have to be identical. So now, actually, Stephen Hawking, and I don't know if it was tongue-in-cheek, but he suggested that entropy may start to decrease and time sort of when the universe is at maximum volume, and then it collapses. When it starts to contract, he said, maybe entropy starts to decrease. Because he equated at that time entropy growth with the expansion of the universe, and said that if the universe is collapsing, then entropy may decrease. But I think it's nuts, because nothing so dramatic should happen when the universe is huge, 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 and it's full of particles. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I quote from his book, A Brief History of Time, actually. He said in this book, what would happen if and when the universe stopped expanding and began to contract? Would the thermodynamic arrow reverse and disorder begin to decrease with time, broken cups gathering themselves together off the floor? I think it was not serious, as nothing special is likely to happen at that time. But and if, as he was suggesting, that at the time of maximum expansion, time starts to go backwards, then you end up with a picture like this: big bang, big crunch. So it makes more sense to just flip this around and have this, which is what I have.
So does it mean that A and C points is exactly the same ones?
It does for me. That's what I say. Yeah, and I think so. If there's anything original here, it's my statement that A and C are identical. They're the same point. Okay, so wrap it around like that. So here's my last slide. I think, but so, to start philosophical discussion, okay? There are quite a few physics statements that come out of this, for example, and they lead into philosophy because they're not so easy to prove or disprove. The total energy of our universe has to be zero. It's like a closed bubble of space-time. There are no external lines of force, that is gravitational lines of force going out. They're all contained in because this is the total of our space. So it's like a vacuum fluctuation in some, let's say, outer space-time, which is different dimensionally. So just to have one such thing is very unnatural. If it's a vacuum fluctuation, you'd expect a very large number, 10 to whatever, not an infinite number because that's forbidden by fiat. But then, so this leads to the idea of the multiverse, all of them being like vacuum fluctuations, each of them having a total energy zero, but each of them can have different physical parameters. They're not even connected spatially, if you like. So electrons can have different masses, we can have different numbers of particles, blah, blah, blah. So, and then in the anthropic principle is that we exist and think, so at least one of these universes is amenable to complex life, at least one, that is us. Now, 1 out of a huge number would be extremely improbable, I would say. So, suppose the probability of life in one of these universes is only 10 to the minus 95, but you've got 10 to the 100, you still have 10 to the 5 universes with life, or possibility of life. But probably not like us in detail. Masses are different, forces are different, blah, blah, blah. But they all presumably have to live long enough to evolve life and not blow apart too fast. So, now this outer space-time, I've redrawn this as an outer space-time in which oops, what have I done? I didn't touch anything. I didn't touch anything. Okay, we go.
So where it is here. Oh.
Okay, yeah. So, it's natural to have a multiverse. It's natural to have a large number of them with life or the possibility of life, but they can all have different extensions, lifetime, blah. But this can be closed and finite as well. In fact, I can apply my two hypotheses to this outer space-time. But now there's no need for an expansion or contraction because we don't have lots of particles, we don't need a second law of thermodynamics in here. It can be the same at all positions with a capital P because in outer space and times, just full of fluctuations. And it doesn't have to have 3 outer space dimensions either. But now what you have is, if this is just the totality with a huge number of universes fluctuating in and out of existence in this outer space, then you have the perfect cosmological principle, which Fred Hoyle liked a lot, and saying that the universe is the same at all times and all places. Okay, that's that principle. And it was thrown out of the window by evidence for the Big Bang, but it could still be true in this outer space-time. And now people who talk about eternal inflation, like André Linde, and now there's new papers I've just seen, a paper coming out called Steady State Internal Inflation, because Linde has outer space sort of thing with universes popping out of our universe and continuous inflation, continuous universes inflating. There are different ways of looking at it, but I would banish eternal because eternal means infinite. So it's steady state, a steady state outer universe. And that's my last slide, but there's a little bit of philosophy here, but not now you go to more philosophy.
Just one remark about this anthropic principle. As I tried to stress on my talk, that our universe is fine-tuned not only from the point of view of life, appearance of life, and thus thinking beings, but it also fine-tuned from the point of view of discoverability of the laws of nature. Our laws of nature are described by beautiful equations, as we know, from Paul Dirac. Let me stress this. And these together, these two, we should explain not one fine-tuning for life and thinking, but for discoverability as well. And these two cannot be explained like this, as I tried to stress on my talk, but I do not want to go into details because I already spent a lot on this.
Yeah, but are you saying, I'm trying to understand what you're saying, are you saying that the universe, the set of universes that have life and discoverability is smaller than the set that has life?
It is much smaller.
Much smaller.
It is much smaller, of course.
Well, I don't think that It can be.
That I try to
don't
to
know
explain
how-
why.
Okay. All right.
So,
I'm
so
gonna-
but it
you
would
bring
take
up your
too
thing.
too much for me again to go into.
Yeah,
we may
yeah.
discuss it later.
I don't think that negates anything I've said here.
It tells us that this sort of logic cannot explain discoverability. Life, yes, can be explained. I absolutely agree
Yeah.
from your anthropic logic here. Anthropic principle we exist, and you just suggested some numerical example that 10 to the 5 universes could be anthropic. I do not have any objections to that.
Yeah.
But my objection is that you cannot explain discoverability in this way.
Well, I don't quite know how you define discoverability. Okay, that's
As
that's
Paul Dirac, the same.
Huh?
Laws of nature are described by beautiful equations. It's exactly,
I-
exactly like this.
So you can have life with ugly equations, not discoverable.
Exactly. Life can be with ugly equations.
Maybe.
Yeah, philosophical point, exactly. So I'm going to suggest some philosophical reflections on Mike closed loop universe, just to step aside from discussion of physics, but trying to point your attention to some various philosophical, ethical and metaphysical aspect of this. So this is a picture which I stole from Mike, the universe. This is Torus. And if you are looking on our universe, or you may look at these multiple multiverses, you might suggest it, in this way, you already looking in the world where nothing appears, essentially. An appearance of whatever is in fact sort of illusion of inner beings. We are looking on the universe, multiverse, from the outer, or better say, transcendental point. Transcendere is a Latin verb which essentially means that you are going out. You're climbing somewhere out and looking from outside on the world. And from this point of view, nothing essentially appears, because whatever is sort of forever or eternally in this frozen, in this stay in time. Appearance of atoms, life, thinking beings, civilizations, Fermilab are illusions in a sense. They just are at their eternal places of this eternal torus.
You keep using the word eternal, which I banish from my vocabulary.
I mean that there is no time from the outside. The position where I am looking at the torus.
Just change eternal to unchanging.
Unchanging.
Unchanging. All right.
Unchanging.
Okay,
there is no atemporal or atemporal.
Are you talking about my outer space-time or my inner universe?
Now I'm talking about this position where I am looking at this torus. I am somewhere and looking at this torus where I am looking at this torus from. This is a position of sort of transcendental reason, right? So we are looking at this torus not from the inside, because inside we will be caged in time.
Yeah.
We would see some movie of ourselves, of the world outside, but here we are not seeing any movie.
So this is the outer space-time, my outer space.
It's not already space-time, because all space-time is already there. If you have some outer space-time, I also will include this. Is it torus or super torus? Take it as you like. So I am looking on the entire multiverse, and I am looking to it from what? From what is my reference frame?
Oh, I see.
Where I see this maximum multiverse universe. If you have single universe, or you have multiverse, you are looking from what? What is your reference frame? And the reference frame is a reference frame of abstract, objective reason. I do not have any other words.
Okay, let's not
Transcendental
take this
reason, because reason does not belong to the picture. It is outside.
This is a drawing, but don't take it literally as if you can look outside and see it from outside. You can't. Okay. All the universes are inside that torus.
So then,
But you
look.
can conceptualize it from
Huh?
outside.
You can conceptualize it from
You can,
outside.
I mean, this is a conceptualization
But-
of it.
well,
from
but
outside.
now we are thinking. So philosophy is about thinking. We are thinking about this world, and we are representing it. We are describing it, and we are looking on that as an object of our thought. So we are subject, and object of our thought is entire being. So we are, as subjects, we are outside. It's always object and subject of any thought. They are separated. You cannot think otherwise. Even if you are thinking about yourself, you're reflecting, for instance, your own steps in life, your own decisions, or why did you decide this or that, or in this or another way. You are separating the thinking and the subject and object of you, even in yourself, even in this intimate sense. And it is always like that. So when I'm thinking about your multiverse as a subject, I'm already outside. I am doomed to be outside. I cannot think otherwise. So, and then I'm asking myself, when I'm trying to describe this world in terms of reason, right? So laws of nature, that is all reason. This reason does not belong in this sense to this world. It is also because I am already outside as a thinking being. I am subject and this is object. I am outside of this object. And the reason which I am trying to catch and to be synoptical with this reason, to have the same optics, this is a condition to catch some truth about the object. Because I'm trying to find objective reason, not my fantasy. I'm not looking for some fantasy. I not want to dream and to have some dream about this world. I want to find the real truth about this world, how it is by itself. It means already it is implied that I believe in sort of objective reason, as always in physics, by the way. So we, in this sense, when I am asking myself a question, where are we? Are we in Taurus? Or are we somewhere outside? We both somewhere here, because from this picture we belong to time and space, and let me imagine that we're somewhere here, and local creatures, very small, but at the same time we are transcendental beings as subjects thinking about this object. We can picture it like that or in other way, it doesn't matter really. What matters is that we are considering entire being, the whole being, whatever it is, all the universes, multiverses, whatever it is, as something out of us, as some external to us object. And we are asking about truth, about reasonable background underlying this object. We are looking for this reason which is already there, we believe. We are looking for this reason. We are trying to discover, which is somehow covered by our lack of knowledge, by phenomena, obscure phenomena which we see outside, by weakness of our personal weakness or weakness of our civilization, whatever sort of thing. This all covers the reason, but we believe that it is possible for us, for human beings, to discover time to time a little bit. And that's why we have a hope to discover whatever is covered, to something existent. So
when you say where are we, the we is consciousness. It's not your physical body. We know what your physical body is. It's inside one of these.
Exactly, I mean consciousness. Our thinking beings, our subjects,
yeah,
who are looking whatever in us, who is looking for truth, is looking for reason, a reasonable explanation or reasonable description of object, and in this case the object is everything, all the physical world. So we have dual positions in this point of view. We are dual beings immediately. This is implied. We are dual. We both existing here somewhere. We belong to, we are all working in Fermilab. Fermilab is a part of the United States, and States is a part of Western civilization, so on, humanity. And this is a little tiny, infinitely tiny spot here where we are now. But at the same time, we are outside, so we are dual creatures already. This is implied.
But also, when you have this like row of things, and you're saying that this is illusions, I'm not quite agree with this, because I mean, of course, if you have time looped and you have like this multi-dimensional toruses, then all processes which evolve in time, of course, it's not a real evolution, because it's just timelines.
May I stop it for a moment? I'm suggesting to follow this sort of procedure. Short questions, please interrupt the speaker, whoever the speaker is. Statements and longer statements, please wait to the end of the talk. Otherwise, I will not finish.
Oh, okay.
So this is, sorry for interrupting you, but
Short question.
short questions.
Why, it's just curiosity. Why can't we think the same way, like transcending from somewhere, even if it is not closed?
I agree. Without closed loop, you have a bunch of those questions the same. So, but now I am concentrated on this specific picture.
Okay, can I ask a short question?
Yes.
So when you said that also a thinking being is illusion, I mean...
No, thinking being is not illusion. No. Appearance of atoms, appearance is illusion. Time is illusion.
Fermi-love is not an illusion. It's just
But I mean, thinking being is
Running time is illusion. So because
Thinking
here
being
we
is
are
not
looking
part.
on the we are looking on the entire torus. So all the times are already there. From this point of view, this picture is telling us that all the creatures are frozen in time. You know, like insect can be frozen in a piece of amber, and all the trajectory. It's like world line logic. So in this point of view, from the point of view of this torus, time is illusion. Time is a concept to describe for immanent creatures, creatures who are inside of torus. But as soon as you are outside, you are seeing time as illusion, because all times are already presented here. There is no time. So there is no difference between time and space. Time is not running. Running, appearance. Running time is illusion. Time does not run. Did I answer your question?
I didn't ask it.
So you ask
had no chance to answer.
illusion. So thinking
okay,
beings
but
are not illusion.
I'm
Appearance
trying to
is
say
illusion.
that like thinking being is not a part of this universe at all, because like the Mike Albro idea is.
But this is
about,
statement.
like,
This is not question. This is statement. Please ask question. Short question.
why is it included in the line? I mean, thinking being is not a part of like this
I-
closed
I-
universe.
Before I try to explain why, we are still sitting there in this and thinking in this room. So this room, and we belong to this specific space. So we in this aspect we are there, but also we are outside, as I tried to explain just before, right?
But I mean, ideas do not exist on this torus, right? Like,
The ideas. This is physical world. There is no ideas here. This is physical world, right? But text as a physical.
People could disagree with.
Huh?
People could disagree with.
Many people could disagree.
Many people would.
Yes,
disagree with
but
this
I am not trying to have agreement with everybody. So I am just expressing what I see.
Okay.
So we have some question? No?
Well, I guess what do you mean by implicit? Implicit means that's just what you're thinking?
Implicit, what I see as implicit. Yes.
Okay.
I cannot tell for humanity or even for anybody of you guys. So when I'm saying that something is implied, implicitly there, then how I see it, right? So every one of you would of course disagree with me. I'm trying to explain why I see that it is implicit there, but it's after all it's my vision, my personal vision. I could be wrong. So it is implied that we have an access to 2 points of observation, immanent and transcendent to the torus. This is important, I think. So, as in physics in general, the primacy of reason is implied, because we are trying to explain everything existent in terms of reason. So, reason is, in a sense, more powerful thing than even this multiverse, because we believe that we can cover it somehow with reasonable thought. And physics is looking, and this is in physics essentially everywhere, this position implied. But for this specific topic is even more stressed, because we are considering the entire being, and we do not have even a reference frame. The only reference frame here, where we can see this torus, for instance, is a reference frame of abstract pure reason. We cannot point any other reference frame where from we could see this torus. So reason is objective. It structures the universe independently of our ideas and existence. At least this is the sort of reasonable explanation, reasonable description we are looking for in physics always. And the objective reason is discoverable for us humans. We also believe in that. Otherwise, all our business would be hopeless. Truth of this phase, and this is general phase of fundamental science, truth of this phase is demonstrated by its tremendous success, scientific success of humanity. The very attempt to think reasonably about the universe shows its consideration from the transcendental climb over observational point, thus implying this point, its existence. The assumption of the transcendental point of reason and unity of reason is equivalent, unity of reason, this is important, so not just patches, reasonable patch here, reasonable patch there, and so on, no. We also believe in the unity of reason. We are trying to find the general theory of everything, as sometimes it is called, so some internally not contradicting and beautiful theory which describe everything or main features of realities. So the assumption of transcendental point of reason and unity of reason is equivalent of the assumption of the transcendental mind. So transcendental mind is what makes reason or laws of nature describing everything existent unite, self-consistent, or even beautiful. This transcendental mind, the single and unifying source of these reasonable structures. Otherwise, how could we motivate that we believe in the unity of reason, not on a lot of 10 to 100 reasonable patches which describe them.
What do you mean by mind?
In this aspect, I mean the source of this reason. So some single and unifying source of all reasonable structures, laws of nature, if you want, describing your universe or multiverse or whatever it is, whatever you are trying to describe. The mind is a single source. It is a totality where reasonable laws of nature, all the reasonable structures are going from. So this is a principle of unity of reason.
For me, mind is associated with consciousness and brains. And
No. Do not confuse it with brain. Mind is different. Brain is physical object. Mind is mentality. Mind is nous in Greek philosophy. Mind is where ideas appears. Idea is a mental entity. Brain is a physical entity. Mind and brain are two different things.
But if you hit the brain really hard, the ideas stop.
Huh?
If you hit the brain really hard with a hammer, the ideas stop.
The ideas, because
Yes. If you will kick with a hammer your radio would not work. But it does not mean that the music which goes with electromagnetic waves will stop. Music will still be there, but your radio would not work.
But there's no evidence for any such consciousness that is external to the mind. There's no...
I am just pointing your attention that we should distinguish these two. Because mind is where ideas appear. Brain is physical object. In brain you have cells, you have chemistry, you have these currents, little currents and whatever. You have different atoms and so on. Mind is where ideas appear.
Are you talking about qualia? Are you talking about qualia? The qualia of is that what you're saying is mind? The subjective experience of the world?
Qualias belong to mind, if you wish.
Okay.
So all ideas belong to mind, and qualias belong to mind.
So why do you need mind for reason? Can you not visualize the word?
Because reason by itself belongs to mind, not to brain. Brain is physical object. Brain is described by mass, by percentage of water, percentage of blood, how much hemoglobin do you have here, how many cells do you have there, and so on. This is physical object to be described in physical and chemical and so on terms. But mind is very different thing. Mind is where ideas are coming from. Mind is what you are using, answering, trying to find the truth.
Okay.
I think my ideas come from my brain, but that's my feeling. But would you try?
But I'm just
Would you
separating these
substitute
two.
the word mind with God? I mean, you would
So
say-
mind of God is in a sense, I'm not using the term God here because I'm trying to be specific. So and show what is actually implied. When you are in your consideration, especially it is clear. It is implied that reason, laws of nature, whatever you are trying to find out, they are unite. It's not a 10 to the 100 patches of reasonable little reasonableness. They are unite. So there is source of unity, or principle of unity of all of them. And this principle of unity of reason, which we are looking for, to trying to discover it a little bit better, the principle of unity is transcendental mind. Mind is where reasonable ideas are going from, and we are looking for objective reasonable ideas. Whatever I am talking now, essentially, I am reminding you the very old philosophy of Pythagoreanism and Platonism. It is objective idealism of Plato, essentially. And all physics is built on that, like you or not, believe you in God or not, but it is implied there, and it was implied directly and clearly by the fathers of science. Then many people who are working in science forgetting and disregarding this, that may be okay, because you may be very well in physics and do not see what is implied, but it is still implied there. What I'm trying to show.
Clarification, the definition, reason is the same thing as mathematical structure in your...
Reason in this aspect is the same as mathematical structures.
Okay.
Yes. In this aspect, yes.
And you're trying to say that dualism is the basis of science. Dualism.
I'm not using in this. I'm not using the word dualism. Please ask me whatever I told.
Okay.
If you will ask me about
Okay.
all possible philosophical ideas, I will never finish. I did not use the word dualism, so please not ask me. But I told about dual positions of us, being creatures in specific space and time in this torus, and being transcendental subjects, thinking about this torus. So we are dual in this point of view. So transcendental mind, in this sense, what I tried to explain and define, is implied here as well, as it was implied directly by Plato. The number, and Descartes as well, by the way, the number of thinkable mathematical structures is infinite. This is one more point, which I'm now coming to different point. Number of thinkable mathematical structures is infinite. A few of these forms are structuring our world, while an infinite number of others do not participate at all. If every universe is finite, and there is only a finite number of universes, infinite number of mathematical structures cannot be employed, even in the multiverse. There would be a fundamental segregation between the employed and unemployed mathematical forms. What or who did determine this segregation in the world of forms? You already touched this question, I believe, and this is a question of my talk, which I gave here a bit ago about nature of laws of nature. But what or who did determine the segregation of the world of forms? Is it the same mind which is implied as a source of reason? I do not see actually any other possibility to answer this question, but this is a question. On which, if any ground, is this segregation determined? One more point. To explain the fine-tuning for life and thought, is a purpose of the full, or the full-blown multiverse is needed? What Mike actually mentions is that sufficiently big multiverse, I will not even use the word infinite, if you like, in this respect, I avoid it. Sufficiently enough blown multiverse is enough to explain life. This is weak anthropic principle and multiverse. But discoverability of the laws of nature can only result from their purposeful selection. The discoverability of the laws of nature cannot be explained by weak anthropic principle and multiverse. This is, again, I'm not going to go into details of this. I'm just reminding you, and this is conclusion of our paper with Lev, and we discuss it in talk here, Nature of the Laws of Nature, and paper is also available in archive or in Fermilab website. And you may see all the links in our website.
It's actually called The Genesis of a Pythagorean Universe.
Yes, the paper is called Genesis of Pythagorean Universe, yes. So now I'm going to ethical part of this. So before I try to stress metaphysical aspects of this inspired by this torus of Mike. Now I'm going to ethical aspect. Ethics is another big part of philosophy, essentially. In the realm of the finite universe or multiverse, the number of possible stories, theories, pieces of art, lives is finite. They either appear and disappear circularly, if you want, if you're going this time around this torus, eternal recurrence or eternal return, or they exist atemporally similar to world lines in physics. If you are looking on this torus as a whole, where nothing really appears, but everything, whatever it is there. Similar to world lines in physics. Can life have any inspirational meaning in this finite realm, where even the transcendental absolute mind would be doomed to watch the same finite movie again and again, or the same picture, see the same picture forever? Can the life have any inspirational
You know, I
meaning?
object
This
to
is a
this
question.
language because-
No, I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I object to the language because you say the transcendental mind is looking at the same again and again and again forever. I banish forever. It only happens
It's
once.
just an object. It's just looking
It's
at
just
an
over
object.
once.
Atemporally.
There is
Transcendental mind.
nobody has to. Nothing happens again and again. We're not going to reappear in 10 to the
So
100
I,
years or something.
Mike, I suggested two versions, exactly to foresee this, your objection. I suggested two versions, whatever you like. Either again and again, eternal return, eternal recurrence is one possibility, and another to see the same picture, to watch the same picture forever, a temporal picture. That's your torus. And the question is, can life have any inspirational meaning with this metaphysics? My point is that ethics is dependable on metaphysics. You cannot essentially separate. Values, ethics is about values. Values depend on metaphysics. This is a point. You cannot separate them. You cannot just proclaim arbitrary values for arbitrary metaphysics. It would not work.
What about Hume's guillotine then?
Huh?
What about Hume's guillotine? That Hume's guillotine between what is true and what is art. You cannot derive what is art from what is true. Well, you can inform your what is art from what is true, but you cannot derive it.
Okay? So this is a statement. What is the question?
I mean, doesn't that conflict directly with what you're saying? Is that somehow you can derive any sort of ethical or...
No, I'm not saying you can derive. I'm saying that ethics depends on metaphysics. I'm not saying that you can derive ethics from metaphysics.
I see.
It's different
It's
things.
informed by it. Okay.
In general, the idea of cyclic universe is not new. It was known to ancient Egypt and Indian philosophy, to Ecclesiastes, if you remember the circles, this eternal sort of eternal return in the book of Ecclesiastes, Empedocles, Stoics, alchemists. It was one of the main themes for Nietzsche, who pointed to the amor fati, this term of Nietzsche, amor fati, love for fate, as a precondition to its acceptance. Nietzsche used the term eternal return, but it is essentially the same as looking for this frozen time torus. Amor fati as a precondition of its acceptance, ethical acceptance, to live with this. Amor fati is compatible with ethics, religions of obedience, but it goes against values of creativity. Obedience is the dominant ethics of all traditional religions. All of them are concentrated heavily, 99%, if not 100%, in obedience. The difference between religions in this respect is some of them have a little bit values of creativity, others have essentially nothing of that, only obedience. For instance, the word Islam means obedience. Yoga means obedience. And Christianity, of course. Huh?
Yoga means union.
What
Union with the universe.
Union with God, and in this sort of union
Giving up
which
free will. So
make
you're right. So giving up
which,
free will.
yes, you have to abide. But it goes against values of creativity. This is my point. This amor fati. Amor fati goes against values of creativity. Creativity, and scientific creativity included, loses its value if in fact nothing new happens, if novelty per se is illusory. In this torus, nothing
I strongly
appears.
object to this statement. I think it's nonsense, this statement. I mean, creativity, scientific creativity, has value now in our universe. It's got value now. I mean, if the universe ends up in a big crunch, civilization's gone, minds are gone, but it's got a value now in our universe, in our life.
This is objection, Mike. Let me finish.
But yeah, but if you're making that statement,
This is
I
a
think
statement. I'm
without any
almost done.
justification for it.
So what I am saying is that creativity loses its value if in fact nothing new happened. Because creativity is a value of that things which did not exist yet, did not found yet, but you will find it, and you put a lot of your efforts to find and to make existent new knowledge which did not exist yet. But from this point of view, where nothing essentially appears, the novelties, any novelty, the very novelty per se is illusion. In this world,
Everything's different today from yesterday. Novelty is happening all the time. It's
this
not-
is illusion.
Only from a temporal perspective. He's saying if you go out of the temporal perspective, it's just one blob.
Yes.
It's just a donut on the thing.
Exactly.
Right,
From-
I mean, we
From
all-
a temporal
we-
perspective,
we all
nothing
learn
new
how-
appears.
We
And
all
this,
learn how to, or a lot of us learn how to walk and talk and speak, and it's new for us. You know?
Yeah.
It's nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes.
So, I mean, science-
nothing new under the sun. Nothing new under the sun. Yes, that's what I'm saying. This,
So we're
and this is the
learning-
religion of
we're
obedience.
learning the laws of physics. It's
Yeah,
useful
that's-
for
So
us.
he's saying that's an illusion. He's saying that is an illusion.
This is
of
illusion
walking.
from the point of view of this
Well, we are
transcendental
learning
view.
the
If
laws
his
of
transcendental mind, which he won't say was God in his view, is outside, then God doesn't care about whether we discover the mass of the electron now or tomorrow, but it doesn't mean it's an illusion for us, it may be for God.
No, it means because really the values are given in this aspect by the most powerful being. And the most powerful being here is God. And we are trying to find the creator of this, implied creator of this source of all this reason. And if from the point of view of the most powerful subject, nothing new is appearing, this derogates, humiliates the values of novelties. Because the values of God are true values. And you cannot get rid of it. You may try to proclaim your own values, but if you know that God is looking differently on this, it will diminish your value almost to zero.
Well, it's an old idea that if God sees the whole of space and time, then what's the point of anything, right?
Exactly, and this is compatible with religions of obedience, not with ethics of creativity. That's my point. So this world where infinity is excluded is perfectly okay from the point of view of teachings, religions of obedience. Just go and do right things, follow rules, follow eternally true procedures, and that's what is required for you, man. And this is religion of obedience. Follow. And rules are eternal and correct. It is not up to you to invent something. You may see something, for instance, or just look and enjoy this looking. Whatever already exists. Or abide. But creation of new things is not to the man, it's to the God. This is a religion of obedience. And the picture of universe, this torus, where nothing new is in truth appearing, where appearance is illusion, is compatible with religion of obedience, not with ethics of creativity. This is my point. But from another side, this very picture is appearing as a part of our efforts to understand. It is driven by ethics of creativity, Mike. I hope you will agree with this. Not by ethics of obedience, right? It was not ethics of obedience why you are trying to work on this torus, because you're sharing, fully sharing, I'm sure, the values of creativity, at least in this respect. But the values of creativity are negated by this picture. So this is ethical paradox, what I see here. So it is ethically self-contradictory in this respect.
I think so.
No. Even your creativity, everything is already part of the donut. It's part of your time donut.
That's what-
Everything. There's no
That's why I'm
There's no
saying, and exactly by this vision, the values of creativity are negated. Values, I'm talking about values now. Values are negated. It's ethically self-contradictory.
Okay.
Ethically.
Actually, you say something about kind of novelty. things,
Novelties, yes.
Can it be put in this way, kind of epistemological implication of this picture, is that history for humankind, I mean, for us who are inside this torus, who are temporal,
Immanent creatures.
Yes, immanent creatures, history has no sense. We can learn from history. it again undergoes crunch and recreate it again and again. We cannot keep track of the past.
History also does not make a big sense.
Doesn't teach on
No.
a big
No,
picture.
our history is local. I mean, it's
Right.
it's the history of the Earth and so on. It goes back a few thousand years, whatever. It's perfectly valid, but in the outer multiverse, it's got nothing to do. And ethics, I don't know that you can even talk. Ethics for me is a human thing. You can't even talk about ethics in the multiverse. I mean, you might want to do that, but
I'm talking about values.
or values.
Values.
There are no values in the multiverse. Values
No,
are
no, no.
human things.
What I try to stress that this metaphysics, this sort of physics and metaphysics, it cannot be compatible with the values of creativity because creativity, novelties, appearance of new things, which requires for us a lot of efforts, is essentially nothing because it exists forever in the mind of this atemporal reason, which is the most powerful subject, most powerful mind in this creature. So you cannot argue against the values of God. You just cannot do this.
And if I don't believe there's a God to have
No. But I try to explain. It's not a matter of your personal belief or disbelief. It is implied there as a temporal mind. That's what I tried to show. If you do not accept this, let's leave it like that. But as I'm saying, I'm trying to share with you what I see as implied in this picture. You may see differently, but I see it very clearly, and I try to share, but maybe I am failing with one or another of you. This could be easily. After all, we have different eyes. So, then, exclusion of infinities in physical worlds cuts the roots of scientific inspiration, derogating value of creativity. It is anti-scientific, self-contradictory from the ethical point of view. Being ethically self-contradictory and scientifically unfalsifiable, also let's keep in mind this, because this picture cannot be falsified in terms of standard scientific
It can
form.
actually, but
If something can, then we should of course give this favor. If something could be falsified and checked, then of course this is priority number one. In respect that it is unfalsifiable, I think that many things, at least many things in this picture are unfalsifiable, and ethically self-contradictory, what is the criterion of truth for this sort of theory? This is my question. What is the criterion of truth? If it is not falsifiable and self-contradictory also. And my last point. Although exclusion of infinities goes against values of creativity, I tried to show this, how I see it. The contemplation on the closed-loop universe can be, paradoxically, very inspirational. At least it was very inspirational for me. Helping to make some important philosophical steps. I think it helped me to express some of my views better. For that, it is my pleasure to thank Mike and Albert one more time for their inspirational talks about the counter-inspirational universe.
thanks.
One more paradox of your Taurus, guys. So I'm done.